Welcome into Birds Huddle, powered by PointsBet, alongside Reuben Frank and Dave Zangaro. I am Taryn Hatcher. A Cover 3 edition of Birds Huddle today, and we've got plenty to talk about, especially when it comes to the Eagles' defense after their performance against Lions. And as it turns out, so does Nick Sirianni. These are his thoughts on defensive coordinator Jonathan Gannon, and they're the subject of today's Bird's Eye View presented by Oceans Casino.
One of Nick Sirianni's core values for the Eagles and the theme of the week ahead of Monday Night Football for the Birds is connecting. Making sure the Birds defensive backs stay connected to Vikings receiver Justin Jefferson is arguably an even bigger challenge. Jefferson put up the best receiver numbers in football in week 1, but the real issue is getting the quarterback Kirk Cousins and making him uncomfortable, which will start the process of disrupting the Vikings passing attack, something Jonathan Gannon's unit needs to improve upon after getting 1 sack in week 1 and finishing next to last in the category last season.
I got a lot of confidence in these guys, a lot of confidence in the coaches that coach these guys, and a lot of confidence in Gannon that will get to the quarterback. That's something that we know we need to do to affect the quarterback, to affect him and get him off his timing and off his rhythm. And I got a lot of faith in these guys. And so, we'll do different things. We got to always put players in position to make plays, and that's what we're working like crazy to do. But as far as our guys, I got so much confidence in that defensive line group.
As far as the pressure for the defense to improve and to get things right in week 2, Sirianni added that this is the NFL. This is Philly. We know what the expectations are, and the expectation is to win football games. The pressure is nothing new to us. Outside the NovaCare complex, Danny Palmels, NBC Sports Philadelphia.
Our thanks to Danny. That brings us to our 3-point stance presented by your Mercedes. It's Dave and Rube's stance on the 3 items of the day. First up for Dave, let's talk about number 1, Jalen Hurts. He spoke today about gearing up for the bright lights of Monday night.
It was pretty cool. It's pretty cool. I'm excited for the opportunity. I remember the clip of, we're playing the Vikings, obviously. I remember the clip of Randy Moss. So when I think about that, I think about all the iconic moments, played out on Monday night. So I'm looking forward to it.
There's overwhelmed, there's underwhelmed, and then there's just whelmed. And that's what I would say Jalen Hurts was just then. Dave, your first stance, it's going to be the arm of Jalen Hurts, not his legs. That will be the difference maker against Minnesota on Monday.
Yeah, well, to be very clear, these things really work hand in hand. But what we've seen on tape and what the Vikings have seen on tape is his ability to scramble, his ability to break free with his legs. And they're going to have to honor that. However they do it, they're going to have to account for it, and that's going to leave some passing lanes open. And we've seen him be able to make some really good throws. We saw it in week 1, and it was a lot of A.J. Brown in that game. I think it will be mixed around to his other receivers, but he has the ability, and his legs really kind of help him in that respect because defenses have to account for it. And once they do, then he's going to have some easier throws. It really works hand in hand. So he has a chance here, and that's the key. It's a chance because this is a defense that just put a pretty good game up against Aaron Rodgers. He'll have a chance to have a good game through the air.
All right, well, Rube, and Dave kind of just touched on it. The Vikings held the Packers to just 7 points in their season opener. I think it's fair to say that was a bit more of a testament to just the dysfunction on offense for the Packers rather than the efficiency of the Vikings defense. So the question becomes, what is this Eagles offense actually in for against the Vikings defense?
Well, anytime you hold Aaron Rodgers to 7 points, even if he's got receivers who are dropping the ball everywhere, that's still quite an accomplishment. I mean, this dude's, he's lost 13 games in the last 4 years. Mm-hmm. So that doesn't happen very often. But look, this is a pretty talented Vikings defense at all levels. And they got our old friend Jordan Hicks in the middle playing linebacker for them now and had a strip sack of Aaron Rodgers the other day. So look, they're not the same team in the Dome as they are outdoors. They're not the same team anywhere as they are outdoors. So, it's an advantage the Eagles have getting this team outdoors, not in the Dome. But that's a legit defense, and they're going to have their work cut out for them.
They're a legit defense that legitimately had Aaron Rodgers looking like he wanted to cry. That and his receivers. All right, stance number 2. This one is for Rube. Miles Sanders, he had a very good game Sunday against Lions, 96 hard-earned yards and his first trip to the end zone since 2020. Sanders' performance in Motown, is it a fluke or is it an indicator of more good things to come?
Well, look, we've always said as long as he's healthy, he's an elite running back, and we saw it Sunday in Detroit. averaged 7.5 yards per carry. He's got the 7th highest rushing average in NFL history among running backs with 500 carries. So the really impressive thing about Miles Sanders, he's almost eliminated the negative plays, which were a big problem for him early in his career. He's a more decisive runner, more physical runner. He's hitting the hole hard instead of dancing around. And he's now a guy who really never has a bad game. You look at most running backs have bad games here and there. He's only had 4 games over the last 3 years under 4 yards a carry. So the consistency is there, the production is there. I think when he's healthy, he's an elite back, and I expect him to continue playing the way he did Sunday.
All right, I want to talk about a newbie here for our final stance. Dave, everyone was excited to see that mountain of a man, Jordan Davis, out on the field last Sunday. He played just 22 of 69 snaps against the Lions. That number has to increase, correct?
It better. It just better. And I'm not saying he's going to have to play 50 snaps a game. That's not the way this works. He was still a rotational player at Georgia. He's going to be a rotational player here. He shouldn't play the fewest of the defensive tackles. It just shouldn't happen. And that's with all due respect to Marlon Tuipulotu, who had a great rush in that game. But Jordan Davis deserves to play more than him. You drafted him in the first round. You traded up to draft him in the first round. I think the key for him is really going to be playing in that 4-man rush, proving that he's not just a player in the 34 look and that he can play everything this defense needs him to do to be on the field. He better, Taryn. I mean, that's as simple as it gets. He better play more than 22 snaps going forward.
So, Rube, 22 of 69. What do you think was the key to him playing that limited number of snaps, and what's going to be the key to him being useful when he does have a heavier workload?
Well, yeah, I think, look, the Eagles looked at it like we got a lot of depth at the position. We're going to rotate our guys. It's his first NFL game. And they just, look, I think there was a breakdown as far as quality control goes. Somebody upstairs has to let the coaches on the field know, look, Jordan Davis is doing okay. Get him some more snaps. And that didn't happen. And that's a breakdown in communication. I'd like to see him in that mid-30s range, 32, 33, 34 snaps. I think would be a good number for him.
And I want to say the yards per carry averages when he was on the field versus when they were off were a good 7 yards difference.
I don't think it was all because of him. I think it was a lot of scheme, but he helped. He was an effective player in that game, and he does the one thing they needed in that game was to stuff the run, and he wasn't out there enough.
Dave, I can always count on you to make sure that my stats don't get in the way of logic reasoning. And Eagles defensive coordinator Jonathan Gannon raised some eyebrows earlier this week when he said that GM Howie Roseman was a part of the team's game planning. Head coach Nick Sirianni was asked about Roseman's role. Here's what he had to say.
What Jonathan was talking about is when we go in, we talk about the roster all the time. We're always in communication about the roster, and Howie's expertise is, the roster management. And so what we'd have to do and what we meet with Howie about all the time is hey, Howie, we're going to need this guy up and this guy up. We're going to put this guy down this week and this guy down, and Howie has to make that happen.
Welcome back to Birds Huddle, presented by PointsBet. Gentlemen, Howie Roseman, it appears that he is a part of this team's game plan every week. Do you think that there is cause for concern there, a bit of, helicopter parenting, or is this much ado about nothing? Rube, I'll go to you first.
Well, I'll tell you what, if it came out that Howie Roseman was not in any meetings and he's not talking to the coach before games and he's not involved in roster management, there'd be an uproar about it. How come the coach and the GM aren't talking? This is normal. It's common. This is what a GM does. He's not out there saying, I think we need to blitz on, on second and long. He's out there saying, they're talking about what tight ends to have up, what D linemen to have up, what practice squad guys to elevate. That's what he was talking about. Look, there's a lot of things to be concerned about with this team, especially on the defensive side. This is not one of them. I think people are just so conditioned to criticizing everything Howie Roseman's involved in that this just kind of became a made-up, invented story. There's nothing here. Howie's good at his job, and people have to kind of understand that and accept that and realize that. And if you had a GM that was not talking to the coach on a regular basis, then there'd be cause for concern.
And Dave, I'd imagine if Howie was really problematically involved, he would have been one of the first guys to be like, hey, I traded up for Jordan Davis and he's only playing 22 snaps in this game, no?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you can kind of point at that and be like, well, what's going on here? But to your point, I mean, he should be involved on some level in these discussions. And I thought Nick Sirianni gave a really good explanation for it, and he gave an example, or a couple examples, of Britton Covey and Noah Tangiai being called up from the practice squad. Howie's in charge of those things, and he has to know about the personnel, and the transactional side of it is very important. They have to try to strategize how they're going to do all this stuff. So it makes plenty of sense. And Rube's right. I mean, if Howie's in there with the whiteboard and he's got the pen out and he's talking about all this stuff and he's coming up with plays, that would be a problem. And I don't think that's what's happening here.
Our producer Booney just went, whoa, in my ear when you actually said the phrase, Rube is right.
Yeah, I didn't like it either.
Never happened before.
I know. I
don't
can't
care
believe
for it.
Bear's not here to experience this.
Save that tape.
All right, let's talk about the Birds' opponent now, because facing the Vikings means facing Kirk Cousins, and he has some very good career numbers, but in primetime games, not so much. He's 10-18 all time under the lights, and while he's not exactly, I think it's fair to say, a name that like instills fear across the league as a quarterback. Earlier today, Brandon Graham, he discussed what it is about Kirk Cousins that makes him such a tough matchup.
He's smart. I feel like, he always has a good game plan going in. And the goal is to try to mess up the game plan. But I think that he do a great job of just getting the ball out, sticking to the game plan and making sure that, he make plays, get the ball to his guys. So we got to make sure, we make it difficult for him.
Fellas, so I have some very Kirk Cousins stats here. He's 5th all time in passer ratings, but he's just 500 as a starter. So which of those numbers do you think is closer to who the true Kirk Cousins is as a QB, Dave?
Look, this is the regular season. This is September, so I think those numbers are what you have to worry about. He can beat you, and you can't take him lightly because his career record isn't very good. He has all the physical tools to beat you, and we've seen that here before. We've seen him have really good games against the Eagles, so they can't look at his career record and think, he's just a guy. Maybe at times he is just a guy, but he has the potential to go out and put up big numbers. We've seen it time and time again. So I wouldn't take him lightly is my way to put this. He's not an all-time great quarterback, but he can beat you on a Sunday or a Monday, and you have to worry about him.
He's not a great quarterback, but he's a great talent.
Okay, could you explain?
I don't know what that means. No, it's just, he's got the ability to throw for 455 yards anytime he goes out. He's won one playoff game in his career. So, you can't put him up there with the top guys, but on any given Sunday, this guy can light it up. He's got weapons. He's got a running game. I think he's got a good coaching staff. So he's a dangerous guy.
But what is it about Kirk Cousins that he can have all this talent, but he just kind of evokes like a very meh kind of reaction? Am I wrong?
It's that record.
Yeah.
It's that record, and he hasn't shown up when it matters. And that's kind of right or wrong what quarterbacks are judged by. I've never been a huge fan of the wins being a quarterback stat, but it is. That's how they're judged. That's why Tom Brady is the GOAT, right? Because he has all the Super Bowls. So you look at Kirk Cousins, and he hasn't performed when it really matters.
Dave's right.
We'll see how he performs on Monday. Wow.
I mean, that happens
Wow.
so often
Stick
now.
around, folks. Anything can happen on this show.